Hello, welcome to our first episode of Season 4 of DecentraLounge, brought to you by GlobalStake, your institutional SOC 2 Type 2 certified, truly decentralized bare metal staking service provider. We're delighted to have Jake Hartnell and Sam Cassatt, co-founders of Layer, join us today. Considered a darling of the EigenLayer ecosystem, Layer is at the forefront of blockchain innovation, dedicated to advancing decentralized infrastructure through its pioneering Waves technology. Jake Hartnell, serving as the CEO, brings his extensive background in blockchain development and community-driven platforms, while Sam Cassatt, the Chief Business Officer, leverages his deep expertise in strategic growth and decentralized finance from his time at Consensus. Together, they are steering Layer to reshape how decentralized applications operate at scale. Today, we'll explore the unique challenges and breakthroughs of Layer and what the future holds for decentralized technologies. Guys, it goes without saying, deeply honored to have both of you here today. Would love to just start off with your stories, your backgrounds, how you got into Web3, came from two different sides of the world in this approach. So Jake, why don't you lead us off?
Wow, it's a really long story. I'm gonna tell the quick 30-second version. Found out about Bitcoin in 2010. That was really cool. That got me sucked in. Um, Ethereum came out, and that's when I really, really got interested. Like I was already part of Bitcoin Club at like Berkeley and like writing my thesis on decentralized content distribution. And then like when Ethereum came out with smart contracts and full programmability, I was like, whoa, really the future, right? Um, almost did an ICO in 2016, which I didn't do, and that was a bad mistake. Um, was building throughout the bull market of 2017, and eventually starting to hit all these like issues with like scaling. Like CryptoKitties was making like the network basically unusable, which was not very good for my use case. And so I went to this event at Cal Blockchain, and I saw Sunny from Osmosis giving a talk on Cosmos and the Internet of Blockchains. And at that time, Cosmos was space alien technology. It was proof of stake, right? While everything else was like proof of work at the time. And they had the vision of like trustless interoperability so chains could like intercommunicate with each other. And so I thought that was really cool. And then, well, I got sucked into Cosmos for quite a few years. Helped launch Stargaze and Juno Network, made a project called DAO in the Cosmos ecosystem, which is still widely popular. But like really, I kind of started searching for like what was next, what was going to be like the next big thing. How do we make, DAO tooling and governance like even cooler? And that's kind of the path that led me to Waves. So, but that's the TLDR on my background. We'll talk more about Waves in a bit, I'm sure.
Awesome. Thanks so much. How about you, Sam?
Yeah, so I'll also try to give a super condensed version because it's been a long journey. But I was watching the financial crisis happen in 2008. I didn't know what that meant because I was a scientist and engineer nerd person. And so I decided to learn what that meant. That led me to studying monetary theory. I helped build an alternative currency back then, pre Bitcoin. And that group of people led me to Bitcoin and followed that, didn't know what to do with it other than make a wallet or an exchange. And then I stopped paying attention, honestly, because I didn't know what to do with it. And then whispers of this thing, Ethereum, that no one could describe to me, started swirling around. I went to a meeting with some of the founders of Ethereum. Immediately, it was described to me as a decentralized virtual machine, and I immediately got it. And I walked across Manhattan that day with my mind blown back from that meeting. And I knew that I had to work on that. And then shortly after, I helped build Consensus from the ground up. I was chief strategy officer there for the first like 5 years or so. Ran the venture studio where we funded things like Infura, MetaMask, many of the seminal infrastructure pieces of the whole ecosystem. And a few years ago, I started thinking about how modularity was going to impact the roadmap of Ethereum and all of Web3. And I started diving into different ecosystems and different places where people had thought about these distributed system problems before. And that's how I met Jake, because he was working on some chains in the Cosmos ecosystem, and I basically forced him to explain it to me, coming from my Ethereum like tunnel vision world for a couple of days straight. And that was one of the seminal moments of Layer.
Wow, really cool. What a background too. I didn't realize that you went all the way back that far with consensus. That's pretty crazy. So you are both truly OGs. So even again, delighted to have you here. So let's talk about Layer. Let's talk about what you guys are building and what this enables for people all across sort of the blockchain spectrum. Obviously, it's a critical component of EigenLayer. EigenLayer has become sort of a darling in and of itself for Ethereum, for what it's unleashed. Even in fact, I remember, Jake, the first time I met you in person was at ETH Denver 2023, and it was at the Cosmos EigenLayer Shared Security Summit that day. And just hearing Sriram give his keynote about what EigenLayer was going to unleash, for the Ethereum ecosystem. And I remember like watching it intensely and trying to understand all of it. And it just is crazy how far, 2 years later, what this has turned into. And now you guys seem to be sort of a critical linchpin in all of this, and allowing people to kind of build on top of EigenLayer. So let's dig into what Layer is going to establish in the space.
Great. Let me just like step back a little bit, because I think a lot of people don't fully understand this stuff. Most people, I'd say 99.9% of people on CT actually don't understand restaking. And like AVSs, I think, is another thing. It's like, why we need these things. What AVS, autonomous verifiable service, like what the hell is that? It's like ultimately like it comes from the fact that smart contracts are actually kind of dumb, right? And like people are like, where are the apps? Where's like we were talking about decentralized Uber in 2014. Where's decentralized Uber? We were talking about decentralized social media from the beginning. Where are these apps, right? And it turns out that like we actually have a lot of limitations in smart contracts that inhibit the kinds of experiences that we can build. For example, smart contracts are dumb. They can't react to anything, right? They're not aware. They don't know their own state. If something happens on even the same chain, like they don't know about it. They only do compute when you do a transaction, right? They also have very limited compute. So let's say you want to do something like, I don't know, make liquid democracy, or make like a complex rewards incentive system so that the more NFTs you hold from different collections on different chains, you get rewards multipliers and stuff like that. The reason we don't have these kinds of incentives is because you cannot do them in gas on any smart contract platform, including even the new ones like Move and SVM and things like that, right? And so to me, like this whole space was interesting because it allows us to expand the types of decentralized protocols we can make. Waves supports WASI, which is WebAssembly System Interface. And so you can make smart contracts that can make network requests, or open up a WebSocket connection, or run a GPU workload, or do matrix multiplication, all the stuff that you can't do in normal smart contracts, right? And so like the whole point of all this like AVS stuff is to like unlock the next generation of great decentralized crypto protocols. And if you look at, if you go to the wavs.xyz, you go to our docs and you check out some of our examples, we have like dynamic NFT examples. So like this is really cool generative art. So you have an AVS that like basically like generates like NFTs like using like deterministic AI and like uploads them to IPFS, and you get a result like on chain, and they're beautiful. You can also have these NFTs like automatically update based on different events that are even happening on different chains. We have a Waves safe example. So you have like a DAO controlled agent that can controls like a smart account basically. And it gets a bunch of smart contract ABIs, or these are the contracts it's allowed to interact with, and that automatically generates tools for it, and it can basically perform like on-chain actions. And the agent itself is run by a decentralized operator set, each with their own like crypto economic security to run that agent in the way it's prescribed, right? We have a Waves prediction market, so you can easily make like prediction markets and custom market resolvers that, like I want to make a prediction that like, my Twitter account is going to have, 30K followers in a month, right? And make a market off that, right? Like allowing people to easily like make the long tail of oracles, there's just like so much interesting stuff that we can build. And that's really what I wanted to do. I think there's a million L1s, there's a million L2s. They're all like basically the same. They have the same apps. And, both Sam and I have been around long enough that we actually want to see like the real kind of progression on a lot of the ideas that were floated around in like 2015 and 2016. Like we want to just like deliver on like the vision of crypto and not just keep doing the same shit over and over again. It's boring.
Yeah, and if I could just expand on that a little bit, that phrase, decentralized virtual machine, that blew my mind and called into, called into vision sort of how you could build this decentralized, like financial governance, like network of state that is global and decentralized. This is a step along realizing that vision, right? This is probably one of the latter steps in realizing that vision. And thus far, it hasn't really been possible because of the limitations of smart contracts, because of the limitations of the virtual machine, sort of step rate that we have in normal chains. Even your fastest TPS chain is still not fast enough to do actual high performance compute that would be part of having a truly decentralized, like global virtual machine. And so I think what most people got caught in narrative wise a couple of years ago when they thought about EigenLayer, they thought about restaking is, okay, well, I've got a bunch of staked ether and this is like another place to get yield. Okay, and then that's where it cut off. So that's interesting, but it's not nearly as interesting as what it means to have this thing fully operational and in market, which is what Waves is helping us do, which is that now for the first time you can have basically crypto economic trust, which is the same kind of trust we have in proof of stake networks, but you can have it towards any process, right? So normally the way people think about building systems that need to, fetch data or do something off chain or whatever is they think, well, I'm going to build a new chain. Look at like Chainlink, right? They had to build a whole chain and they have to convince a bunch of people and they have to have the metic staying power and they have to have the financial staying power to secure that network and to run it as a chain. But all it's really doing is fetching price data and then sticking it somewhere. Do you really need a whole chain for that? Probably not. There are infinite things that's the answer to. So if you can take the same trust model as proof of stake, but you can apply it to any process, then what you're doing is you're kind of taking like trust from a consensus chain, transferring it to another system of trust that is an AVS that has this like verifiability property and this crypto economic security, and you can transfer that state then back into any Web3 process or non-Web3 process even. And there are lots of implications for that even beyond Web3. But for now, I think people have sort of missed the actual application of this. They've just been caught in the restaking narrative.
I appreciate you bringing up Chainlink because when they first came around, they led with education, lots of blog posts, helping people understand who and what they are. Education feels like a big part of onboarding people to new infrastructure. What is your plan for helping developers understand what they can do and even why they should care about using your tools?
To me, it all comes down to like examples and demos. It's like, we can talk about stuff all we want, but like, check out the Waves safe repo. It's like, here's like a decentralized agent that's run by a bunch of different nodes, right? That can like perform like arbitrary actions, right? Like, I think like the way we get people excited, or the dynamic NFTs example, right? We talked about dynamic NFTs for so long, but they were really hard to build, right? And then oftentimes when they were built where like one computer is just controlling the updating of the NFT, right? It's like, trust me, bro. And sometimes that works for art projects, right? Like if it's an art project, people kind of like trust the artist to like not rug their own collection, right? So they're like, okay, well, we trust the artist to run this thing. But what if you're using like NFTs in like a DeFi kind of use case, right? Where like, the NFT like represents all your different positions and that metadata is being updated, like, well, then you don't want it to be run by one computer, do you, right? And so like the great thing about Waves is it makes it like much easier to make, things like these like dynamic NFT use cases. And we're going to be, introducing some really cool like art projects, because I think art is actually a really great way to get people to play around with like new ideas and explore what's like possible and like get inspired again. We have to like wake up these developers, because I think back in 2015 and 2016, like people had way more imagination, right? Because like nothing at that point, it was just like all hyperstition, right? It's like everyone's writing their white papers, everyone's just like imagining this really bold future. But then eventually the reality came crashing down, and then everyone kind of overreacted to that, and then we've kind of been in this cycle where we need actually that new imagination time again, right? Like, um, and so yeah, I think luckily we've been getting very good outreach to developers, which is our main initial community. Like Nodder from EigenLayer has been like making some amazing videos, and at the end of the day, people want to like be able to easily make verifiable off-chain services, right? Um, Protocols themselves oftentimes have some element of their protocol that involves some off-chain interaction. And off-chain could even be another chain, by the way, right? It's not on your chain, it's off your chain, but it's on another chain, right? I mean, ultimately, I spend a lot of time in Cosmos, so we think about the multi-chain world, right? And Waves is multi-chain from the get-go. That's super important to us, and yeah. So the way I'm thinking about it is like you just got to show some people some new experiences and new apps. And I built Waves to make apps. Specifically, I built Waves to make governance apps because I'm a DAO nerd. But
I'm sure Sam, as the business guy, doesn't want everybody making DAO apps all the time. But
hey, no, DAO apps is good business. It's actually a bigger total addressable market than everything. We're actually like low key, like replacing the institutions and for-profit companies and nonprofits and all those things. It's actually the hugest market cap. It's just that there's a bunch of like people that like don't have the vision, and they're just like they look at what is and not what could be.
Touche. And I think this is what's really interesting too, is that because you guys have this WASM-based approach, right? Do you find that it's easier to recruit devs because it's something that's broadly known and understood by many, even beyond like the Web3 space, and then it unleashes that imagination to create? Because that's the one thing we've always been talking about. Like, we just need more dApps. We don't need more infrastructure, just need more dApps. So do you feel like that's helped with you guys recruiting devs and getting people to build on Layer?
I think that will help in the long term, right? And in like the great thing about WASM, and in the next release of Waves, we are going full official multi-language. So Waves will support Rust, it will support Golang, it'll support TypeScript, and we'll have experimental support for Python with some caveats. So not every Python library is going to work, but a lot of them will. If you want to do like NumPy, matrix multiplication, that kind of stuff, like that'll work. And so like, wow, that's opened up a large amount of like developers. And what's really cool about the latest and greatest WebAssembly stuff, like the component model, which almost basically no other crypto project that I know of is using like a lot of the latest and greatest like WASM stuff, which is like WASI and the component model. WASI is like an alternative containerization solution to Docker, right? Docker is fine, but Docker is not very efficient. Each Docker image has a whole Linux operating system in it, right? Which has to boot every time you start it. So there's like a 3-second startup time. That means operators, validators, people like you guys, have to leave this infrastructure just running in the background, right? Just idling, sitting there, because the startup time is too slow. It needs to be ready, right? Whereas the startup time for a WASI component is microseconds. Like, so that means as fast as you can load it from storage, you can run it, right? That's great. Much more efficient resource utilization. The other thing the WebAssembly component model gets you is like composability between different languages. So I can write a component that's like an IPFS uploader in Go, and then I can compose it and import it into another component that's written in Rust, right? Super easily. Like and you could do the same with like TypeScript and these other things. And so this interoperability, right, where you can like write components in different languages, and then you can use those components inside of other components and like compose them all together, regardless of like which language they come from. Like, this is the bold new world we're heading into.
Super impressive. Sam, what do you think about just, your timeline? When you guys going to have a lot of this getting ready? Just future thoughts about what is going to launch next for Layer. Kind of give us an idea of when all this is going to be available.
I can give some thoughts without Jake getting too mad about setting exact dates. But this next release that Jake described is coming very, very soon. That should allow us, to get to continually onboard some of our operator set as well. So that's coming very soon. And I think that we already have a number of people building on this, and that is accelerating pretty rapidly now that people have, to your question of how to do the education. I think just seeing other people building in public is a lot of the education. We have a lot of devs that have even found this organically already, and so I think as those things start to get on a testnet version of this, and as they start to be composable with each other, even we have an increasing number of integrations as well with other projects that they can utilize the resources of, or utilize the power of, then I think it'll start to snowball. In terms of exact timelines, Jake might want to have an opinion there, but
So, we're like one of those fancy omakase restaurants, and we cook stuff up and then we send it out from the kitchen when it's ready. And I really hate all this stuff of like, oh, we ought to have like, the timeline, and like we have to hear like every crypto project gives you their like 2-year roadmap, and everyone asks for this, but no one believes it anyway. And when is the last time any of those have been like accurate? And sometimes, things come quicker, and sometimes they come slower. And sometimes like you just got to be reactive to like also what the market wants, right? Or like, or like what the market conditions are, and like all those things. So it's like, next Waves release is coming out in a week or two. It's going to be on testnet. You'll be able to like start uploading these components and like playing around. Like, we send it out from the kitchen like as stuff is ready as soon as possible. Like,
retract the question. I'll just say, let them cook.
Just let us cook. Just let us cook. We'll cook some delicious dishes, and guess what? They're going to be out before. We're going to have some dishes out before Q3, right? We're going to have some dishes in Q2. We're going to have some dishes in Q3. We're going to have some dishes in Q4. We're going to have more good stuff cooking next year. Like, just let us cook. Like, like it'll be fun.
I have one more question to ask, but while you're still in the kitchen, what are some ways that people can follow along so that they can, see those updates when the new dishes are being put out, and just follow along with the team?
Yeah, well, you can follow me on X. You can also follow Layer on ETH at X at Layer on ETH. WAVS.xyz is our website for Waves, and that has linked to our Telegram group. It has links to the GitHub. It has links to the docs. Like, if you're a dev, that's definitely the place you should go. But highly recommend following us on X, and and Sam is just at Sam Cassatt on X as well. So give us a follow on X. We'll be posting the updates, and definitely check out waves.xyz.
Awesome. No, and then I'm super interested in this question. So it's a little bit more existential, but how do you envision the future of the internet, and what role do you see Layer playing in shaping that future?
I think that the decentralized internet will be the dominant one. And this will happen of necessity, that we're going to eventually come to some sort of verifiability crisis that will cause, the world to realize that actually we need cryptographic verifiability. And that, I'm here to make decentralization win. The way I see Layer enabling that is like reawakening people to the benefits and power of WebAssembly. And like, why WebAssembly, you would ask, right? Like, well, first of all, like, it's like already supported by like so many different languages, but the main thing is like, it's all going to happen through apps, right? How do we make better apps? And WebAssembly runs on your phone. RISC-V does not, right? Like, you can have WebAssembly running in your browser, right? It supports the component model. It supports things like WASI, right? Like I envision a world where people are like opening up an app and they're hosting a server for their like over a P2P network for their like personal data, right? Like, the real decentralized social stuff. And they won't know anything about this. Normal people won't know anything about this, right? Like, that's the whole point. Only nerds need to know about this, but like, like we can actually make the user experience of decentralization great. I will point to you to an example, Napster. Napster had an amazing user experience. People forgot that we actually can, that like decentralized protocols can actually have a better user experience than non-decentralized one. But we have to get our heads out of our asses as an industry and stop making more, fast EVM chain. Who's working on the P2P layer? who's like working on like, you know, really pushing the boundaries of what it even means to be a decentralized protocol, right? Like, you know, and so like that's really like where I think we can come in, is like breathe some new life, make some new technology that's like fundamentally like a game changer in terms of what it allows developers to easily be able to do, the kinds of decentralized protocols that they can easily make. And, you know, ultimately, like I think WebAssembly is crucial to double down on as an industry, because it's how we're going to get privacy. Why? Because like in order to get like ZK does not automatically give you privacy. If I like send my data to a ZK prover network, right? Well, it's not private anymore. I sent it over the wire, right? Like I have to generate that proof locally on my device and shield the inputs, right? And so like, what's the best timeline to do that in the next 1 to 2 years? It's WebAssembly. And so like, I think that there's like a whole host of things that we can really unlock. And the key thing that I really want to unlock with Waves is like a new era of decentralized apps.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for being here today. This has been an incredible conversation. I can't think of a better way to start off our brand new season, by having you sort of talk about these bigger issues, and especially that sort of existential one, and what the future looks like for decentralized apps. But Sam, Jake, thank you guys again for taking the time. For those of you who are watching and listening, we'll be sure to link those ways to get in touch with them and the Layer team. And you will be able to hopefully hear this on audio on Spotify and Apple. And of course, we will have the video on YouTube. But thanks so much for being here with us, guys. And for those of you who are watching or listening, thanks so much for being on DecentraLounge. We'll see you next time. Take care, everybody.
Later.
Thank you.
Thank you.